Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of Mental Digestion. I'm your host, Precious, and today's guest is my brother,
Brian.
Ryan.
How
Say hi to the people.
y'all doing? How y'all doing?
And today, our topic is actually going to be a revisit. So, I don't know if y'all remember, but my now husband and I, Mike,
Congratulations.
thank you. We did a episode on toxic masculinity, and while that was an interesting, float on the surface kind of conversation, through you and I's conversation, we've found it important or necessary to dive in a little deeper, and also to explore some of the opposing viewpoints of the topic. Right. And so,
Sure.
yeah, me and Michael tend to be on the same page about a lot of things. And so this will help with, some of that opposing viewpoint part of it. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it as well.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So, you heard the episode, and I know you had some opinions and some thoughts. And so what did you feel was important to make sure that we address?
okay. So first, I do believe that there is a such thing as toxic behavior,
Right.
but I do a podcast as well, and on mine, I would caution against attributing anything to masculine or feminine nature. It's if a behavior is toxic, it's toxic, right? And so uh, it's not to say men are perfect and we don't make mistakes. That's not my mentality. But
Mhm.
there is a certain aspect of, people kind of coming down on men. I think that's happening right now. You might not agree with that, but that's just how I feel. And I feel like there's anytime you want a behavior to be changed, if you put that kind of title on it, people are just gonna kind of tune it out because they feel like, oh, that's just somebody who attacks me for being what I was born as. So um, a lot of the things that y'all were kind of going over, I felt like was just natural behavior, not just of men, but of any person, for somebody, to work out multiple days out of the week.
but
So,
I think that the part, I don't know if this was said, but it was the importance of that piece was the reasons behind it. It wasn't about like, okay, working
yeah,
out is toxic. And so maybe that wasn't addressed. And that's why, sometimes it is important to kind of revisit and make sure that you say those things that maybe like we assume that you understand what we're saying because we're in our own heads,
yeah,
right?
y'all on that same page and y'all click.
Yeah, yeah. So we're like, yeah, we get it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, somebody else is like, what? So yeah, absolutely. But like that was more about like, okay, doing things solely for the purpose of another's gaze. That's what makes it toxic. If you're doing something for yourself, for your health, and that could be for feeling good about how the way you look. It can be about that, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are solely doing something just for the gaze of another person, that is toxic.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of harsh on a man to say if you're trying to attract the attention of women that you're toxic? I thought that's kind of what we're supposed to be doing to ensure the survival of the species. That's one of those things that a lot of men have a hard time understanding about this toxic masculinity conversation is because, we learn these things based on our interactions with women, so a lot of times if uh, like a woman will tell you what's wrong with you faster than anybody else. Most men do actually have this in their mind that, hey, I'm good. Like I don't go outside and put on makeup. I know I'm ugly, but hey, it's all good. I feel like I'm beautiful.
I'm beautiful.
I just get up and go, but some woman will remind you. So then as a man, you start doing certain things to say, okay, well, I want these women, to look at me as something, something to see, which I don't feel like is wrong. Everybody wants
Yeah.
somebody to comfort and hold and all that other stuff. So
Yeah.
I think we kind of develop a lot of these things based on, I don't say common sense, but based on a trial and error. It's probably more
Right. No, and I want to. Okay, so it's not to say that something is necessarily wrong. Okay. So I think that's where, okay, because there are things that we do to attract the opposite sex that are toxic, but they're not necessarily wrong. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Explain that for me. Yeah,
Because
explain that.
I totally get what you're saying in that, okay, well, I'm doing this to get somebody. I want to be
Yeah.
desirable. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's not toxic because you can get so consumed by something
Okay.
that now it is a toxic behavior. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Like it's not
Okay.
wrong
Yes.
to want to be attractive,
Yeah.
but
So
if I,
that's what
yeah,
y'all were getting at with the multiple
yeah,
times y'all saying, hey, this dude just
yeah.
overindulges
Solely,
in this thing.
yeah, like they're
Yeah.
obsessed with doing this specifically for someone else, not even for themselves, but for someone else.
Yeah.
And that's what can make it toxic.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
Mhm.
There is a, you gotta have balance, right? You gotta have
Yeah,
balance in life. And sometimes,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes going past that.
And I want to say with the I get what you're that was a very good point what you said about like cautioning the wording because someone can be sensitive to that wording and shut down, right?
Mhm.
However, it actually comes from men. The term toxic masculinity it came from men. So it was something that happened after the feminist movement
Mhm.
where there were a group of men, or there were several authors and poets and things like that that were kind of assessing, where we are as a society. Okay. And it became obvious to some people, to some men specifically, I shouldn't say people, to some men that some things had grown toxic in the way that they were operating. And part of that had to do with things like the fact that men were no longer in the homes and had a more hands-on approach to the child rearing. In that now they had to go out to work, whereas at first, it was we were an agricultural type society, so everybody's at home. While you did work, you working with your family. So like they had more of an impact on what's going on with the children and things like that. And then also how there was there's this pressure that men get for being more it is about being a provider, but it was like on another level, right? About like that constant need to produce, that sort of thing. And how
Mhm.
that was toxic for men because it's toxic for anybody. Like you said, like a lot, like the things that are going to be in toxic masculinity, if a woman's doing them, they're still toxic. It was just the reason
So,
why masculinity
right.
is the reason why masculinity is added to it is because it's about the social norms of masculinity that have been constructed that are toxic.
But why do we call it
It
masculinity if both men and women do it?
but there's certain things that are just masculine, and then there's okay, you can say that something is an activity, and while I'm trying to make sure I answer your question. Okay, sorry. So you can make sure that I'm sorry. You can there can be both parties participate in these behaviors, but that it's expected of men. Like, okay, society. There are social constructs. That's a thing. Okay,
I agree.
so there are things that that society says are acceptable behavior or expectations of men and of women.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so if
So
those
that's why
expectations are one of the ones for men and
that
it
are
happens to be toxic, then we're gonna
yeah,
call it
then it's the
toxic.
toxic. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I got you. I just feel like it's like if you want people to actually change it, I don't feel like people will change it when
Right.
they constantly hear this as an attack on
Right.
men.
I
And
completely get. I agreed with what you said, but I just think it's funny because it came from men. Men made
men were
up
wrong.
that term.
That's the
But
first time.
it's a way of it's an association thing because it is about that specifically. So it makes sense for them to name it that. But I completely agree with you that can be a bit triggering for some men. Be like, I don't even want to. I'm going to shut down when you say that because like you're not going to tell me that me being like cause that's where that's where it goes. That's where that conversation goes. I always, so you see me being a man is toxic.
For sure.
Like, no.
I mean, to be honest, 100% honest, that's kind of how I heard it the first time I heard somebody say toxic masculinity. I think it was like a Gillette commercial, and they was doing all of this.
Really?
It bothered me. I hated that
Gillette commercial. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You know, as much money as we spent on these razors, you know, I had bald heads since I was 12th grade.
I just don't understand why they would even talk about that in a Gillette commercial. That's my whole thing. Like, what?
Like, haven't we been loyal to y'all? You know, so it was like this whole, they was doing these things, and it was like, you know, men doing things that was like approaching women that he found attractive. And it was like, some other guy would try to stop him, like, hey, man, that's not cool. You're like, what? Like, he finds her attractive.
I don't think that's toxic. I wouldn't call that a...
So the waters kind of got muddied so quick.
Yeah,
when you first heard about it. Yeah, he's just like, okay, I really dislike this term because people start adding things onto it.
Yeah.
That, you know, who's the person who defines these attributes, you know, and you know, where does the line stop? You know, just gonna keep pushing. Yeah. 100%.
Well, as far as the things that are expected of men, that society that has form those constructs. But then when you talk about what's toxic, that these are things like you know what's toxic, whether you acknowledge it or not is another thing. Like, you know, like you might not do a self-assessment and be like, okay, this is toxic what I'm doing, or these expectations that I have of myself. You know, you might not assess it, but if somebody were to ask you, you know, why do you do that, and is that to your detriment, and you really assessed it, if you really took the time, you would know that it's toxic. And that's how you know it's toxic. Going and talking to a woman when you're single is not toxic.
You're supposed to do, yeah. You're like,
yeah. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe there's something that I'm missing in what they're in. I don't get that. Yeah. But that was a Gillette commercial, so there's the weight of that. I don't put much weight on a Gillette commercial.
No, not at all. But it was like, I mean, you know, the audience is men, you know, so it was like, okay, you have this mass audience of dudes who buy this product, and that's what you're telling them. It's a grooming product at that, you know. It's not like it's some product that has nothing to do with anything.
It's about appearance.
Yeah.
So I'm not supposed to
buy your razor.
Yeah. Like, if I'm not gonna talk to women, then I'm gonna just look like a hobo.
Exactly. That's the only reason why I'm buying a razor with 5 blades on it, you know. So
so allow me to. I know I've done this before, or maybe Mike did it in the last episode, but so I'll define toxic masculinity. So toxic masculinity is a term used in social sciences which refers to traditional cultural masculine norms that can be harmful to men, to women, and society overall. Mm-hmm. Adherence to traditional male gender roles that stigmatize and limit the emotions boys and men may comfortably express while elevating other emotions such as anger. Mm. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that we talked about that piece at all.
Yeah, I didn't hear that elevating anger. Yeah. I thought that was.
I think I was more responding. I mean, he had some great topics, and I think it was very interesting. And I think it did talk about things that maybe we don't even think about, because I think so. When you talk about anger, that's an obvious one, you know. But that definitely is something that when we talk about like hyperaggression, that is something that is it's a bit of a gender norm for men, you know. Mm-hmm. That hyperaggression and expressing yourself through violence can be seen as toxic masculinity.
100%.
That's an like you wouldn't argue with. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I agree with that. And so one of the things I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think he wanted to talk about more of those other ones that aren't as obvious, is what the original conversation was.
Gotcha. Yeah, because one of the things that I'll tell it to young men often is being emotional, overly emotional is bad, you know, and not knowing how to control those emotions. And so that's why when I first heard y'all's conversation, I was like, whoa, you know, because it was like, okay, a lot of times, you know, in my profession or whatever, I'll see like young kids, they fight for stupid reasons. You know, it's like, oh, well, he said such and such did this and that ain't true. so we got into a fight, or this person
Right.
said my mom, and I'm like, you acting so emotional right now, and
Mm-hmm.
that is not how men act, and I actually kind of, I guess, recircumvent that conversation into, you're actually not behaving like a man, even though you think you are. You think, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah,
about to stand up and puff my chest out because
absolutely.
this person just said something. But that's not how men act. Men actually know how to control themselves whenever they, you
Right.
know how to let a fool be a fool and an intelligent person be an intelligent
So,
person.
okay. Oh my gosh, Brian. So now, okay, so this is perfect. This is
Yeah.
perfect because this is okay. So what you're talking about is the distinction between masculinity and toxic masculinity. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
the things that are toxic masculinity are oftentimes signs of weakness. It really isn't about being a man. Okay, so like doing things that so the things that we talked about in the first episode they played on ego, okay, which is actually insecurity and weakness,
Mm-hmm.
and so true masculinity is knowing who you are, knowing where your worth comes from, and not leaning onto what others expect of you and doing those things. Does that make sense?
I
It
agree
depends
with
on
that
what we're
first part
talking about.
100%. Yeah.
Depends on what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if they expect me to do, like, if my family expects me to provide for them, if my family expects me to provide for them, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't live up to those
Yeah.
expectations, and me being consistent because of that
Okay.
expectation.
So what I'm talking about is because I don't think that providing is toxic masculinity. I'm
Exactly.
talking about in terms of
Just a response to nonsense and
so the violence, because he said something to you, or he disrespected this person, you better punch him in the face, you know what I'm saying, like that's foolishness and that's
yeah,
weakness.
yeah,
Also, I mean, we've had this conversation before about sexual promiscuity, about
okay.
like how young men are taught that that's how you become a man. Let the that whole thing. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I feel like nobody's ever told me that, but I wish somebody did, just so I could laugh at it. Like, that's funny. That's how you become a man. That's
Yeah,
funny.
no, but I've heard that. I watch, I watch a lot of reality shows, and I even see it on the reality shows, and I'm like, you saying this in front of a camera, like,
That's how you
so you,
become a man, is you sleep with this
yeah,
woman.
like I've seen stuff like that. I've seen that stuff on reality shows. Like, you think that they like, I'm not sure if this is okay to say, so I'm at least not saying it in front of the camera, right?
Yeah, no,
They
it's never
truly
stopped
believe,
anybody.
yeah, they truly believe in it to where they're saying it in front of a camera. But like that is something that's part of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And some people would disagree with that. Do you feel like that's not toxic?
To tell a young child to, so it depends where that person is, right? Because when I was growing up, you have some people, we call them like a sucker for love, right? So they like, they kind of take a woman and put her on like this pedestal, right? And sometimes a lot, and I guess I do agree with you, because some men will tell you, that's just because you've never been with a woman, or you haven't really experienced it. So you're putting this one person at this unattainable spot because you actually your mind has taught you. Yeah.
It's really what it is. It's because you see the value in a person sharing their body with you that you put it on a pedestal, right?
Yeah.
But so dull that by sleeping with a bunch of women.
Maybe not a bunch, but maybe you need a
But
because
that's what
sometimes,
you.
well, sometimes some men will take bad women and they will put those women on pedestals. And you're like, you can't even differentiate between a good woman and a bad woman because you're so concerned about what's in between her legs rather than who she is.
Right.
So sometimes some men will tell, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, but some men will, I'll say it's wrong, but I got to stand on something. So I'll say it's wrong. But men will tell them that because they're not making decisions like an informed thinker, and they're being stupid.
They're distracted.
Yeah.
They're distracted. I feel like I don't know. I could be wrong, but I feel like men tend to make better decisions when they're in solid relationships because they're not so focused on that thing. You know, like I feel like a lot of men get distracted by that.
Yeah,
You know?
I'll agree. I'll definitely agree. Yeah,
It's like,
that is a woman's, you know, I guess handcuff to a man. You know, it's like it's something where they, yeah, it's that's the kryptonite.
right.
It'll take you to your knees. So it's something. It's all right. So it's a double-edged sword, because some men will say, just how you said, hey, a woman can be a kryptonite. Some people will say, if you devalue women by having these multiple partners, like they call it the plate spinning theory, right? So if I'm spinning, 30 plates on my arms, right? You ever seen people do that like a circus or whatever, right? You've seen people, or I don't know, give me a number, 10, maybe 5 plates, they balancing out these plates and they spin them right on the little sticks. You ever seen people do that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So say they drop one, it's not really that big of a deal because they still got 9 other plates still spinning. So that same man will say, okay, my way of not being in a committed relationship and still not being so focused on or being so manipulated by the power of, the opposite sex is to say, yeah, I'm spinning plates. And if I lose one, oh, well, I still got 8 still going, so they don't really make decisions based off on that. But they do spend a lot of energy and a lot of time trying to keep those plates spinning. That's one of those things that they don't understand. So, I mean, I do agree that a monogamous relationship is better than, the multiple. But sometimes that's the way they do it.
Because I think that these men that do have that where they're just hopping from bed to bed, the guys that I know that seem to be hopping from bed to bed seem to be focused so strongly on that. They're not distracted like I can do other things now because I get it all the time. They seem to always be looking to get it again and again and again and again instead of, so I don't think that it's helpful. I think that I am somebody who strongly believes in the importance of dating other people, because you want to figure out what you want, and also because you want to make sure that this person is truly somebody who is for you. I think if you only have one person, you just date that one person and stop dating everybody, then you don't know if that person's really special. If they stand out from everybody else, then it's like, okay, there's something here. You know what I'm saying? So I do think there's an importance in dating. I don't think you have to sleep with everybody to date them, But I mean, that's a complicated, and I wouldn't be able to dive into that. Something that is a man-to-man conversation as far as what is the best way to attack being the master of your domain, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Well, that's for men. I think it determines on what stage of life they're in. Men kind of go through certain stages in their life, and that's tied to their career and whether they have kids or not, or that whole deal, right? So depending on what stage they're in, sometimes, I hate to say it, but the player aspect is the best option for certain people. There's certain times as a man when you say, you know what, at this point in my life, I ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I would say the S word right there, but I'm not going to say
I know what you mean.
So it doesn't make sense for me to get into some monogamous relationship with a chick. Sometimes it does make more sense for me to just be that guy, and when you come out of that and you get to a point where you say, okay, now it's time for me to build in my life. I want a house. I want this. You know what I'm saying? When you start trying to develop stuff that's going to be passed down and stuff like that, then you transition into that next stage or that next phase. And that's a part of growth. I wouldn't say it's toxic because you learn from that, so anything you learn from, I mean, can it be bad? I felt like toxic has to be determined by, is this something that's going to destroy me?
It's unhealthy. Yeah. And it could be unhealthy to your physical, or it could be unhealthy to your mental. And there were studies that show that there was a study that was examining the mental health associated with hooking up, people in that hooking up culture, right? The participants who were not depressed before showed more depressive symptoms and symptoms of loneliness after hooking up. Because the truth is that it's superficial. You're looking to fill a hole that is not going to be filled by having sex. And so you have to figure out a way to feel it in a meaningful way. And I think some people get so stuck in that hooking up phase because they're not realizing, you know what I'm saying, that this is not like it's just shallow. This is not going to fulfill me. And so you can be fulfilled in a lot of different ways spiritually by having good friendships, like strong friendships. You know what I'm saying? Because the truth is that I don't think that we were made to be alone, right? We were made to fellowship and be with other people, right? Yeah. And so that's what you're looking for. And you're looking for something like I said, that's meaningful. And you're trying to find it in a one night stand. Like that.
But I feel like you put that's women logic almost, because I know some men who are not searching for human beings. No, I feel like
you don't realize that's what you're searching for, because society tells you need to be getting this. You don't realize that's what you're searching for.
Like there's a significant amount of men who are not looking for a relationship or not looking for some committed anything. They are seriously looking to hook up.
No, I'm not saying that you need. Not everybody's ready for a relationship, men or women. Yeah, man or woman. I don't think that everybody's ready for a relationship. If you ain't willing to compromise, I mean, you ain't willing to put in the work, because it is work.
So in that phase of life, though, somebody who's not looking for a relationship, what are they searching for whenever they're just hooking up?
I still think that you still have that. You still want to be connected in a meaningful way to another person. So you can search for it spiritually. Get involved in whatever religious organization, in your church or whatever, and or with meaningful friendships, because there are good time friends, and there are like friends that you can really talk about something that you're dealing with. They'll be there for you, they'll encourage you, they'll hold you accountable, like that type of friendship. You know what I'm saying? Like the real friend. Like you search for that and get yourself ready. Like, because everybody ain't ready, but you're looking for that, even if you're not aware you're looking for it. You're trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, essentially.
Okay. And I guess another one from the original show, to keep it on toxic masculinity. I don't want to go into relationships, but it was pride. I think y'all had an issue with pride, saying that that's bad. And I guess I kind of want more clarification, because that's one of those things that I thought was good. Like for me,
it is. Yeah. So. Okay. Well, if you want to say what you were thinking, and then I'll clarify. Let's do that. Okay.
So for me, pride means say I've achieved something, and I puff my chest out because of that. Mm-hmm. But without me making that achievement, there's no way that I could puff my chest out. So therefore, I think pride is good, because it forces me. If I'm attracted to pride, that means I'm attracted to achieving things, right? So in order for me to satisfy my hunger for pride, it's necessary for me to continue achieving things, which I thought
you're not wrong.
Good. Yeah.
You're not wrong. Okay. So that's one aspect of pride. There's good pride and there's bad pride. So the bad pride is, I guess, the term that is more distinctive for that we should have used, because it causes less confusion, is ego. Okay. So there's good pride. Like I have pride in, if I do something, I want to make sure that I do it well, because I believe that I'm putting a piece of me out into the universe, and I'm not about to just throw anything out there that's representing me. That's my pride that is saying that. Okay. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now it can go into a bad situation when I don't get anything accomplished, because now I'm searching for perfection, but that still isn't ego. That's just, now I'm getting in my own way kind of thing. But like I said, there's good pride in that. Like, okay, so I want to do well, and I want to excel, and all that kind of stuff. Having a good work ethic, a lot of times is associated with pride, and in a good way, the good pride. The bad pride, like I said, is ego, which is more of puffed up insecurity. Okay. And it was one of the traits. I wrote the traits down of toxic masculinity. One of them, and I'm going to say it, let me say it, the whole thing, because I know the initial thing will trigger you to say something. Go ahead. So one of them is extreme self-reliance, right? And that sounds, self-reliance sounds like a good thing, right? But extreme self-reliance is where you don't want help from anybody. No one can tell you what to do or how to do something, even though they're trying to help you. Okay. And that's ego, but it's like it's a form of pride, but it's to the point where it's showing your insecurity.
Yeah, so you could be doing something wrong. Everybody around you can see you doing something wrong, but your mind state is so, it's so, hey, I'm good, I'm this, that, and the third, so I'm not listening to y'all. I got you on that.
Yeah. So I like this because it's clarifying some things that, you know, maybe we think are, you know,
because I mean, because I agree with you on a lot of stuff. Like I told you, I respect your opinion on a lot because, you know, but sometimes we speak differently. You know, I come from a different world, and you speak one way, and you come from another world where they speak a different way. But a lot of times we are saying the same thing. So,
Me and Mike have the same problem. We have the same problem. He has heard these conversations because I like to talk about this stuff offline anyway, and so he's heard things so much, so he knows what I'm saying. Yeah.
All right. So,
what's another one?
It was the not telling boys to cry, or not telling boys they can cry or something, right? So
but that's back to what you were originally saying about
the emotions,
not being hyper emotional, right? Okay, and so I don't know that I actually addressed that one. So so with the so now there's I think that we didn't address it because you kind of cleared it up on your own. That's why we didn't address it. Because you were saying that about the whole thing about being overly emotional. That was the term you used. You didn't say that you can't show emotion, but like, so the social norm is stoic. You can't show emotion, which is toxic. Like, you are a human being, you know, now like, you should be able to show emotion. I remember seeing this. It was an episode of, no, it wasn't an episode. It was a Bill Burr stand-up comedy. And he was saying, I mean, he is a perfect example of a lot of characteristics of toxic masculinity, like extreme anger. And, I love Bill Burr. I think it's so funny. But he was saying something about, it was fall season, right? And him and his fiance, I think at the time, they were in the grocery store and they saw pumpkins, and she was just so ecstatic about the pumpkins, that the pumpkin display. She was like, "Oh my gosh, it's pumpkins! Oh, we're gonna go carve the pumpkins! Oh yeah!" Just overly excited. And he said he wanted to like smash her face. Yeah, that was his thought, and he said the reason why was because he was jealous. That he didn't feel like he could get that excited about pumpkins, but he was excited in his heart about pumpkins. That's toxic masculinity. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get you, but we know that that's hyperbole because it's coming from a comedian. But
but there are men that feel like that.
They can't express themselves because of
yeah.
And there's certain things I feel like you shouldn't though. Like, I'm sorry. I feel like there's certain things a man shouldn't be out here. Stop. I would have to tell you to stop. Maybe that's toxic, but you need to calm down about the pumpkins, brother. It's not gonna work.
Anybody.
You said what?
I heard anybody for a man to be excited about pumpkins and the experiences that they're gonna have with those pumpkins, with their family, with their loved ones, whatever. Because usually with the pumpkin, you carving them, you know, that's really fun. Say
this is your husband. Your husband is in the store and he's running around talking about, oh, these pumpkins, they're so amazing. You're gonna be like, man, if you don't shut up.
Well, I think it depends. If I'm honest, it depends. Like there's a line where I'll be like, okay.
Yeah, that behavior is not conducive to reproduction.
But I think just in general, like if it was a woman and she was way more excited than I would still be annoyed. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would be the same for me. Like, you know, like if you said running down the aisles, then you need to calm your butt down. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, a woman or man, like that's too much for some pumpkins, okay? But they're like, oh my gosh, I'm excited about these pumpkins. Like, we're gonna do a lot of we're gonna carve them. I already know what I'm gonna carve on my pumpkin. I got a few design ideas. Let me show you. Like that kind of, like, I think that's fine, Like I said, running down the aisles is a little extreme.
Yeah, it's a little extreme.
But like I wouldn't have an issue with that. Like, I don't know. Like, as long as you're not hurting me, you can get excited. I'm not about suppressing positive things. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay. if it's something that it can be harmful, like I said, like the violent things and stuff like that, like, you need to work through that. And I think that's anybody. So like my expectation is about male and female. And so like, it's like, women shouldn't be putting their hands on men, and it happens. That happens, but it's not accepted. It's not accepted or expected in society. It just happens.
Yeah. So right? I guess my grievance with it was, I kind of felt like when people tell a boy to stop crying, it's just like it's this little boy talking about he wanted a cheeseburger, and his mom was like, no, you can't have one, and the little boy starts crying, and so she was like, stop crying, like, because he's not crying for a legitimate reason. He's crying for something stupid, And
you tell a girl that?
Sometimes me as a man, I probably wouldn't tell a girl that, because y'all gonna look at me as being toxic, telling her she can't express her emotions. So
I would tell a girl that, like, no, that's not the same thing. Okay, so that's not really what it is. It's about sometimes there's genuine times where you need to cry, or you something really hurt you. Okay,
like, are people telling little boys they can't cry, like if somebody dies or if they were physically hurt or physically harmed? I've never heard that.
I wouldn't say when somebody dies, but I have heard of people saying that when they were hurt, when they were physically hurt. Yes.
Okay. And that's it's like legit, like injured and hurt. There's two different things.
So like you scraped your knee and it's bleeding, and they'll be like, "Don't cry." Like I've seen that before, and that's where it goes into toxic. Like, because like they're hurt and they're a little kid. Like, but a cheeseburger, you being a brat. Okay, that's a brat. And like, stop. And I, girl or boy, I think most people will be like, unless there's somebody who is an enabler of a brat, then they'll it's okay, you can't cry. But yeah, I'm not like that, period. As far as when it comes to children. So no, stop crying about just because you didn't get your way. That's not the same thing as, this is a human emotion where I am genuinely hurt and somebody's telling me to stop. That's what we're talking about when it comes to toxic masculinity.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think maybe we didn't express the extremeness. It's a lot of times it's the extreme interpretation of things that are considered masculine. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. But like I said, I still don't like the term. And I don't like the fact that the term was created without also creating masculine femininity at the same time, or pushing those, like toxic femininity, you know what I'm saying, where they don't get the same amount of attention, even if there is a such thing as toxic femininity. People aren't given that a platform as big as the platform for toxic masculinity. We're seeing that in magazines, all over social media, where people actually talk about these things, and they're Gillette commercials. Yeah,
Well, I mean, I think because the things that are associated with, I mean, there's some things that are. Do you want to talk about that? We can talk about toxic femininity. Do you want to talk about what would you say is toxic femininity?
So that's something I would have to really dive into, because like I said, I don't agree with the terms. I believe in toxic behavior. I don't think you should be able to ascribe it to masculine or femininity. I think me and you had this discussion offline where it was like, if somebody said, toxic black people, I would be insulted by that. I wouldn't listen to anything you said just because that's how you started it off. So if I actually want a behavior, or I actually desire the behavior to change, the messaging is extremely important. And
let me see. I'm trying to find the traits of feminine qualities.
Okay.
So we can see if we can go over it.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're right. And there are absolutely things. I mean, they just sound so nice, though. Okay, I'm gonna explain. I'm gonna read them.
Yeah.
So the things that I think the problem is society. Okay, so what's expected from a man, a lot of it is toxic, or a good portion of it is toxic. Now, there are a lot of great qualities that are expected from a man. But when it comes to women,
Let's go. Yeah, let's hit him. Uh-oh.
So traits such as nurturance, so being nurturing, sensitivity, sweetness, supportiveness, gentleness, warmth. Oh, this one, passivity. That's toxic. Passivity, being passive.
Yeah, I got that. But how is warmth? How is warmth toxic?
No, I said passivity.
Prior to that, you said warmth, right?
Yeah. But that, I don't feel like I passed all those other ones because I feel like they were toxic.
Okay.
I didn't feel like they were toxic. No, I didn't look up toxic femininity because I don't think that that's actually a term. I just looked up feminine traits or feminine qualities. Yeah. So I'm just reading them. And so these are things that are considered social norms for women. And I would say maybe supportiveness could be, because sometimes or oftentimes we want to be everything for everyone else and we forget ourselves. We neglect ourselves to be everything for everybody. We're so supportive it's to our detriment.
Okay.
So when it's to that level, that extremeness is what can make it toxic. Passivity, if you're extremely passive, I think passivity that's a toxic one. Expressiveness, I'm surprised that that's on there because I get told all the time.
Themselves. Yeah. You probably do it. You probably do it to an extreme, so maybe you got a toxic femininity trait. But no, women do express themselves, like just how you said with the pumpkin thing, right? Like a woman could, a pumpkin, and be excited about that. A man can't express it if he's feeling that way. So that would be a feminine trait.
Modesty, humility, empathy, affection, tenderness, being emotional, that could be toxic depending on how sometimes people, because we know that this is accepted from us, then maybe we could use it to manipulate. We talked about that offline before.
Yeah.
About how like some women will cry to get their way.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Crying about everything. And so I think that one could be one. Being kind, helpful, devoted. Devoted can be toxic in that. So I remember being in a relationship and it was abusive. And I didn't know where to draw the line between devotion and being a doormat.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it had become toxic for me.
Yeah.
Being understanding. I mean, like I said, most of them are nice. Most of them are really nice. I think there were there 3, 4? Did we say 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nice. I think you can get into some of the socialization stuff about being heterosexual, that can be considered toxic because it's like, okay, well, if you're not like dainty and always wearing a dress and all that, you know what I'm saying? That you're not feminine or that it's not good and being shunned by that, because of those expectations. I think that can be toxic.
But I mean, would that person want to be feminine if they're trying to be? I don't know. That's probably not a good conversation. But
I mean, well, I wear pants and like I said, okay, so we talked about like the whole being expressive. I'm somebody who is very expressive. I want to say how I feel. I have a lot of opinions, which is why I have a podcast.
Yeah.
And some people deem that to be not feminine.
Yeah.
And it's very, it's like someone trying to choke the air out of you. If you're somebody like me, people like trying to push that narrative on me and make me buy into it. And I've had people in my life do that. It's like they're trying to choke the air out of me.
Yeah, I can see that. So you feel like the toxic masculinity thing is kind of hurting men who would like to express themselves in a certain way and stuff like that. But
that's exactly what it was about. It was actually trying to, it was a group of men that were like essentially criticizing society and their expectations that they have on men and what they can and can't do to be a fully realized human being.
But these things exist in society for a reason. You know, it's not like they just popped up. And that's why I feel like the men were wrong who did this, because they're acting like, you know, hey, people just started saying we expect this from men, and that didn't come from a long, I guess, process with nature. You know, like it's almost, I mean, you got natural selection and you got unnatural selection, right? So natural selection is the things that society has developed us for, like you know, a monkey is going to have better hands because they can grip the trees that they climb or whatever, right? But unnatural selection would be like how we've taken dogs and you've breeded them different ways. And, you know, what used to be a dog before, now it looks completely different. This one has cute eyes, and that's because, you know, we've unnaturally done it.
And you take the more docile one and you breed it with another docile one to get more of a docile. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
So so the natural selection, a lot of this stuff that they're saying is toxic, I feel like is natural selection stuff, not unnatural. Like they're mad at the things that we've developed in order to survive as a species, you know. And it's, you know, like the competition thing, saying that that's somehow bad, but that's what's pushed us to a level where I can have a conversation with you while you're in a whole different state than I am. You know what I'm saying? Competition is good. You know, I feel like maybe that's wrong, but
it's good, but it can be, like I said, so there's some of these things are good up to a point. When we get into extreme cases is where it's not good. Like one of my good friends, and she gonna know as soon as I say this, she gonna know what I'm talking about. I love her. So I didn't say that first, but extremely competitive. She's extremely competitive to the point where it is considered somewhat toxic. And she knows it. So there's at least that. But but like so like we'll play a game, and then the next thing you know, she's calling you out your name. Like it's like this is a video game, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's like there's levels. Like I'm so competitive that I just really want to do well, and it helps me to excel. And it's to the point where like now I'm becoming disrespectful and nobody wants to play with me. You get what I'm saying? Like there's levels to it. So like absolutely there is something called healthy competition, and that breeds ingenuity, creativity, all these things that are absolutely positive and necessary. But there is a level that is toxic.
Yeah.
So I think that's the part you have to hold on to, is that like the extreme cases. You think about the normal cases. I think that's the problem, is that you think about the normal cases and just saying that that's it. And like, no. We're talking about that other level where it's like, what are you doing? Like,
I feel like the definition, I guess, man, of toxic masculinity they need to add that word extreme in there somewhere. Because a lot of times when somebody like me hears it, because it doesn't have, did it have the extreme word in the definition of toxic masculinity? Because I mean, even with extreme, some cases, like, you know, like the Kobe Bryants and Michael Jordans, somebody would say they're toxic masculinity, but you know, my children will know who they are. You know, so I feel like sometimes extreme is good. You know, unreasonable men build this world. So I feel like sometimes it's not bad. Does it have extreme
about some things are good, and extreme about some things are bad. But it doesn't have extreme in the word, but it's more about your understanding of, like, because we all know that like, so, there's healthy competition, but it's like there are people that take it to another level, and I think they're, and it's specific to like these expectations of men, and it's almost like I don't know how, it's almost like a caricature of what a man should be. I feel like that's what it is. Like, what was the man? What's his name? Bruno from Popeye.
From Popeye. Oh, okay. Burger, I think it was. Was it Burger or Bruno? I don't know.
I don't know.
The big
the big guy. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a caricature of a masculine person, right? Of a man, of a man.
What's that? Beauty and the Beast. I was watching that with my daughter the other day, and what's his name? Gaston.
Gaston. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let me see. I wanted to read something. It was okay. Okay, so toxic masculinity can take the form of bullying of boys by their peers and domestic violence directed towards boys at home. The often violent socialization of boys produces psychological trauma through the promotion of aggression and lack of interpersonal connection. I have heard, I think some of this is maybe it doesn't occur to you because you lived in a somewhat healthier environment. You grew up in a somewhat healthier environment, but like I said, we're talking about extreme cases. And there are situations where like there are grown men, fathers who will like beat up their sons to like make them a man. Okay. Yeah. Stuff like that. That's what this is talking about. And then like, you better not cry. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do agree that there is an extreme, but I would like to see that, I guess, if you're going to say a term like toxic masculinity, I feel like that has to be noted.
You want it to be more part of the definition.
Yeah, because once you start saying a lot of
when it's talked about in an academic and intellectual way, it's explained like that. It's explained like this is an extreme. These are usually extreme or puffed up cases of just masculine behavior, right? Yeah. So puffed up cases. But it's explained that way, but it's not necessarily in the definition.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like to see, what I don't want to see is young men to feel like they're defective girls. Like, oh, well, I'm not acting right. I need to act more feminine because I've been taught that masculinity is wrong. I feel like that's kind of the danger of this talk. And I mean, I definitely, because like I said, I agree with most of the things that we're labeling as toxic masculinity. When they're in those extremes, I pretty much, that's wrong, that's bad for all of those things. It
sounds like you essentially have a problem with the term.
Yes, mm-hmm. That's pretty much what it is. Mm-hmm. If I'm being honest, it's the term, and what could be the effects of that term, is what kind of, it makes me want to give pushback to it.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. But like I said, I didn't create the term. It's just what it is. and I think they were more concerned about the effects of what that term, not the term per se, but what toxic masculinity will do to men. That's what they were concerned about. And so it was important for them to address it. We're talking about some of the effects of it. So toxic masculinity can produce harmful effects such as violence, and this includes sexual assault and domestic violence, promiscuity, risky and or socially irresponsible behaviors, including substance abuse and dysfunction in relationships. And we kind of address those with the puffed up ego and stuff like that. Like, I mean, like I've been in relationships where like, the whole extreme self-reliance. You can't tell me nothing. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to do anything. It's like, so I'm supposed to just watch you do it wrong. And like almost kill yourself. Like but I have to just not say anything because you have that so ingrained in you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very hard to navigate dealing with somebody that feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely with you. So, I mean, I guess in conclusion of it all, it's not that I have a problem with the content But
Mm-hmm.
you know,
The concept.
yeah, the concept that somebody, hey, you guys are bad, and it just rubs. I think most men who hear that the wrong way to where they automatically, they pivot. They say, hey, whatever. If you're gonna say I'm bad for being a man, even though I know that's not what y'all are saying, from this conversation, I could tell that that's not what you're saying.
Because you're a listening ear, and I think if somebody, you're right that the term immediately will shut people out. They will shut people out. They'll shut a lot of men out that are like, you know what, you're trying to attack me being masculine.
Yeah,
it's like,
especially
no,
if
that's
I'm
not
one
what
of
it
those
is.
toxic. Like if I'm a toxic man,
if you
you're
are,
really not about to hear. I'm not about to hear any of this.
well, you wouldn't hear most of what most people say if you were under that stuff anyway. It's like you really are farting in the wind, so to speak, because if you didn't come up with it, you don't want to hear it. That's really what it is. Well, this was good. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope it cleared up a lot of stuff. And if you had those questions, and I'm sure you're not the only one. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm glad that we had this discussion so that we can clear up some of that stuff, and also, like I said, dive a little deeper. Because like some of the conversations are purely for entertainment purposes. While we want to kind of talk about something, it's entertaining. But that is a serious issue, in all honesty, and because of the effects that it can have on the person engaged in them. Okay. I mean, like I'm talking about like stress, depression, the rates of suicide and physical violence are increased in men because of toxic masculinity, and so like it's a serious subject.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe you should petition. I don't even know who you would go to. Merriam-Webster.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't
know. Talk to her and be like, I think that word should be changed. And I mean, maybe,
Well,
maybe.
I mean, they can keep it the way it is, but the discussions that we have about it, they do have to make sure that we elaborate that we're talking about the extremes, I feel like. So as long as we're doing that in conversation.
Different name that you would go, because I'll title this that different name. What would, not extreme masculinity, extreme toxic masculinity, but because that, to me, that just sounds like toxic masculinity times 10. But
yeah.
So give me another name that you would want it to go by. We'll see if it goes on.
Maybe you'll listen to me. So
what's the term you would name it?
So I would have to take masculinity out, one, but I would just call it toxic behavior. It's like, I mean, I don't really see the need of pushing masculinity onto the term. Like, if the behavior is toxic and both men and women do some of these behaviors, then why not just call it toxic behavior? Mm-hmm. Like,
but it is specific to the stuff, the social norms and social constructs put on men. That's why masculinity is put on there. It's specific to that. It is. I know. I totally get what you're saying.
But men don't choose that, So we're not choosing the thing. So we get the attack. You understand what I'm saying? So we get the attack of toxic masculinity, and we're not choosing the things that society decides a man or a woman has to do. It's just what we're born into. And that's kind of what I was getting at when I was talking about if somebody did toxic black people. Like, nobody chooses their race, right? But if you were saying, hey, these are things that if you looked at statistics, black people have a higher number of, or black people have a lower number of this.
It's actually the term was made up to almost criticize society. It wasn't to criticize men.
But they failed. What they've done is they've created this avenue where people can just criticize men. I understand what the goal was, especially after this conversation. I understand what the goal was, but that's not been the effect of what it is. Like, people have been talking about things like man spreading, like you sitting with your legs open is somehow a bad thing for men. Yeah, it's a real thing. Google it. It's man spreading is bad. Yeah.
So it's like when women sit with their legs open, is that what you're talking about?
No, when men sit with their legs open, they're being toxic. They have toxic masculinity. And because they're sitting on a subway or a train, someplace where women are also expected to sit next to them or something like that. And the man sits with his legs open, taking up more space than they think that you need. But there's no way to prove that without, some kind of X-ray vision. So it's like
I got what you're saying. Lord have mercy.
They're coming up with so much things to pile into that. And I feel like it's not really fair to the man because, some of this stuff is literally natural stuff that you're going to do.
But that's a different posture of heart, Brian. That's a different posture of heart. Just like there's misogyny, there are women that hate men. Yeah. So they're going to do that. That's a different posture of heart.
Just side note, what do you call those women who hate men just because they men?
I really don't know.
So what would you
call them? I feel like you have a name for it. Do you have a name? What's your name?
I just want to point out the trend.
No. Just because I don't know. Just because I don't know the name.
It's not popular, but everybody knows misogynist. Everybody knows. We have these words set up for men who do horrible things, and these terms set up for men who do horrible things.
Women had a lot of time to think about it when we couldn't vote and we couldn't work, and we had a lot of time to think about what the names would be. So there's that. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and tie it off. This was great. We got to do this again. I think. It's great. We went off the rails a little bit, but it's cool. It was good. It's good off the rails. But yeah. So this is another episode of Mental Digestion. Remember to follow me on Instagram, poppin_precious. If you follow me, I follow back. Did you want to plug your podcast?
For sure. It's called Perhaps I'm Wrong. I'm on Anchor, Spotify, Castbox, iTunes, all of that good stuff. So y'all check it out.
Awesome. Perhaps I'm Wrong. Y'all check it out. Thanks again. Stay blessed and have a good one. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Adios.
All right. Bye-bye.